Hey everyone, I'll give it a few minutes so that everyone settles in and we can get started in a couple of minutes. Okay, let's get started. So thank you everyone. Thank you for joining our Quincus Talks number 7. Today we are going to be talking about untangling cross-border logistic knots with technology. And I am joined here today with two very fascinating guests, Chaminda Gunasekera, SCLT Senior Director at SECO Logistics Hong Kong, and Arif Kurniawan, Commissioner at JNE Logistics in Indonesia. So I'll give a little bit of briefing about them. And I'm Katerina Olivia Lacey, and I'm the Chief Product Officer at Quincus. So Arif, just to give a briefing, a background about him, he is the Commissioner at JNE Logistics Indonesia, where he's responsible and advising board directors. And prior to JNE, Arif was the head of Gas Commercial and Business Development Director at Isargas Group. Chaminda is the Senior Director of SECO Logistics Hong Kong, looking after e-commerce, air product, and network, and also covering the company's sustainability efforts in APAC. He is also the fellow of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport and Services, and served as the chairman of UAE Board of Directors for CILT based in Dubai. He's also very passionate about sustainability. He's also a sustainability activist and looking after many projects for CO2 savings and designing logistics solutions for carbon neutralizing e-commerce products. So we got two great guests with us today, and let's get started. We have some really interesting topics that we want to touch upon, and why don't we go first with Jaminda? So in your opinion, okay, customs clearance is a significant source of cross-border shipment delay. I know we're diving right into it already. You know, it has a lot of problems with it. Things get delayed, things get blocked up. How do you think that technology can actually expedite this? Like, what can we do in terms of technology to actually improve things, either manually or even from the form of just visualization for these for anything to do with cross-border shipment?
Well, yeah, it's a timely question because different parts of the world is actually going through different challenges in terms of customs clearance. But if you look at the developed world, where, you know, let's say US, UK, Europe, I think technology has helped a lot in terms of smoothening the customs clearance process. And it's a lot to do with how each country or region is set up in terms of the personal consumption, or we call it the de minimis, right? If that's clear, and if the customs know how to apply that, then the whole process becomes smoother. And if you also look at some of the challenges in the industry in terms of customs clearance, they come from data, quality data, good valuations, good descriptions, right? So if these three buckets can be filled with good data, I think customs clearance becomes much smoother. So I like to take a couple of examples. In the US, most of the e-commerce parcels, cross-border parcels, are now on a concept called Section 321 T86. T86, which we call very commonly, is an integrated customs clearance process all through data integration with customs. And if you feed the right data and the right valuations, the custom clearance happens within like 4 hours, right? There's no issues. And even if there are any random parcels to be picked by customs, the data flow back from the customs will tell you exactly which parcel to hold back. Now, if you move to Europe, Europe recently came up with IOSS, which is the new policy in Europe. And IOSS is mostly to do with VAT collections and data. And along with IOSS, the customs clearance policy, which is called the ICS2, became much smoother, because when you provide the right valuations, right descriptions, HS codes to right at the start of putting a product onto a marketplace, then the balance becomes much easier. But if you really look at, let's say, Africa or Asia Pacific, some of the countries, the countries do not have a proper recognition of the personal consumption values, like the de minimis. Therefore, the customs clearance becomes very, very subjective, because customs officers, look at it from a personal perspective. Is this the real value? So, technology helps a lot in terms of getting data across to the customs in advance, giving them enough opportunity to look at some of the parcels they want to inspect, and have the brokers identify those parcels and the balance to be released. So if that works, then everything else becomes much smoother.
So you touched upon something really interesting, and that's, I'm guessing, the quality of data in terms of also what order management systems use to transfer that information when handing that out. How can order management systems improve to be able to deal with custom agents, especially that in different countries? Because I'm guessing every country is a little different in terms of what type of documentation they look at, also how they look at, like, let's say, a shipping label. I mean, we also have the problem of, like, the moment that it transfers from one part of the ocean to the other, Roman characters, you can't, if you're sending something to China, can they read them? How do we deal with technology? How do we make sure that custom agents can actually do this fluidly?
Yeah, I think language support is very common in most of the softwares, whether it's an OMS or a TMS. It's quite common now to have different language support, right? But if you don't give the right data set, or if you look at it from a brand perspective, if I'm a brand which I'm selling, let's say, even a mask, I have one SKU, I know exactly the description, the HS code, and the value of it. But it becomes challenging when you have a marketplace or a platform where you have 4,000 sellers, where you cannot always manage the data quality or the valuations. So if you have a proper process of vetting a seller onto your marketplace, then that helps you to create good data. But if you have, like, Omni-type or the online retailers, they have a limited range of SKUs where they can be very clean on what they offer. So some of the challenges we see are mostly marketplace driven. Plus, some of the brands who are selling either on Shopify or Magento or any other platform, they need to understand certain specifics, right? I'll give a very good example. A brand who's selling, let's say, a watch, a smart watch, they're sending parcels to Europe, and when they lose a parcel, the next replacement parcel that they send, they put zero value. But they don't understand, to customs, it's not a replacement parcel, it's another parcel. So you cannot put zero value. So when you put zero value, then the customs stop the parcel. So that means, you got to understand, how to provide the data. So clean data is driven by different disciplines.
And that also goes into another question of, like, the cost behind it. And I'm guessing this is a question for both of you, so Arif or Shaminda. how do we actually bring the cost down so that, once it goes through clearance, it doesn't go back? Because I mean, we all know that the moment that it goes back, that costs a lot of money. And also the time spent in customs also is a form of, it's a drag and makes unhappy customers. So how can we help to keep cross-border costs down through measures such as container optimization, choosing the most competitive mix of carriers, or even the best 3PLs to be able to make sure that there aren't delays also? Arif, would you like to chime in?
Can you repeat? Sorry. Yes. What is the question, Miss? Sorry.
So how can we keep cross-border costs down?
Okay. I will tell the experience in Indonesia, Miss. Maybe there's a possibility it's different with in other country. In Indonesia, the most important is the completeness of the document, and we can predict if there is a delay in the in cross border. So it is. I think the problem is just incomplete document or something like that, and unmet the real price commodity with invoice. And secondly, maybe the commodity that sent to Indonesia need a special permit. So I think the most important, we just follow the rules, and I think the process in border in cross border will be smooth and faster. I think it's quite simple. I think.
Let me ask another question to that. So in terms of what cost you a lot of money in terms of manual stuff, like what would be manual that is high in cost that could be used, like we can apply technology to kind of minimize that cost?
Oh, okay.
Can we automate?
Okay. We understand. Maybe 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 we can our cost in the border cross border is not high, but we have mostly we maybe around 60 until 50% our cost in the delivery in domesticness, like sorting system. So we have do it still manually, something like that. So yeah, we need our many manpower to do sorting, something like that. So it is very costly. And now we have built a mega hub in the near from Bandara Soekarno-Hatta, and we changed the system with automatic sorting machine. So we can reduce the cost very significant. Now we need 900 people to do sorting, and after we implement the mega hub, maybe we just need 150. Can you imagine?
Yes, but that type of machine is quite expensive, isn't it? So.
Yeah, but I think we better invest in machine than people, because if we invest in people, the annual cost will increase year by year, but the
yeah,
and the productivity will decrease by year, because the old men cannot work like when they were young.
So, okay, Chaminda, what do you think in terms of lowering cross-border costs? Like, how can we? So, I mean, we are clearly good sorting and making sure that order management works properly, so that the right information on the boxes are done properly and sent out in the right way. What about when it's at the let's say at the border? What would be
like Arif said, the origin sorting can save cost, but if you really look at the cross-border end-to-end, the biggest bucket of cost is actually coming from line haul, or if you call the middle mile, right? You pay at least 60% of the cost. And then the second largest cost comes from the last mile, right? Customs clearance and last mile. So there are different ways, obviously, whether it goes by air freight or ocean or by truck or rail, it's just optimizing the loading, right? So if you have the data of even before you receive the parcels, if you have the measurements, then it helps you to kind of optimize the transportation part, which is the line haul or the middle mile. But data can also be used in a very systematic way to reduce cost of cross border. I'll give you an example. Now, if you send parcels to the US, if you inject in Los Angeles, if there's an address in, let's say, Buffalo on the East Coast, it's a zone 7 or 8 or 9. But if you go inject in New York, it's zone 2 or zone 3, right? So if you analyze the data by the zip codes and you separate it by injection points, you inject in Los Angeles, you inject in New York, then everything becomes zone up to 5 or 6. That means it's much cheaper for the last mile.
Are
right?
these zones relative to that of how much volume is going to those locations?
Well, I mean, obviously, companies who have volumes, they can manage. I'm not saying that, you're sending 10 parcels. That's why you need to find bigger companies to help you on the supply chain, right? So, for an example, Seco has millions of parcels going into the US. We have 38% market share in the US. So, we don't really worry about whether you give 10 parcels or 100,000 parcels, because our sorting and injection points are geared to handle big volumes. So and again, the so many areas. Even if you look at line haul, let's say air freight, if you build a one full ULD, right, you can actually recover the ULD from the airport without waiting for the airport to break it down. If you allow the airport to break it down, it's going to cost you, because your trucker is waiting for 6 hours to receive the freight. That costs you money, as well as the terminal handling charges. But if you recover the ULD into your own bonded CFS, you can break it down faster and cheaper. So there are so many buckets that you can look at in terms of saving cost.
Right. Thank you for that. And you touched upon middle mile. What can we do to help optimize the middle mile?
Well, right now it's the peak season. The peak season has just started, right? Companies who have good data, they can do predictive analytics. They can first do descriptive analytics to know which buying season are they having X number of parcels. And they could, with the market trend, they can do a predictive analytics to say that, okay, my volume in the peak season is going to go up by 60%. And you make those decisions to buy the middle mile early in the year, and lock the capacity and the pricing. For an example, if a company who had, let's say, 10,000 parcels a day, if they had purchase capacity and rates in the month of, let's say, June, they will be paying, let's say, $6 a kg from Hong Kong to New York or Hong Kong to Chicago. But the companies who did not do that, today they are paying $10.
Right.
So can you imagine your descriptive analytics converted to predictive can give you that advantage of making a decision earlier on.
Thank you. Arif, what kind of technology have you been seeing for middle mile to help optimization?
Okay, yeah, we have make it possible to exchange the data between the customer and our company. So now we implement the API connections. We have implemented the API connection, so we can exchange data from the customer, and we can exchange data to the customer. And we can get all information about the information and the data and the status, something like that. So we can So we can show it in our tracking system, so we can monitor the status of the commodity in real time.
Yeah,
Honest. Yeah,
visibility and control is super important when it comes to the middle mile, especially to make sure that, especially when we're feeding data and we're supposed to feed data to the agents, custom agents, that also, that whole entire kind of information.
yeah.
Well, then let's go on to our next topic, which is actually visibility and control. So this touches really well upon what we were saying. What are the common issues faced with actually coordinating with so many parties? Like, how do we keep everyone up to date? Like, not everybody has the same system, not everybody has the same, you know not everyone's up to date in terms of, their technology. So how do we keep everybody in the loop when it comes to cross border? And this is for both of you, and anyone can jump in.
Let Arif go first.
No. You go first, Pak.
All right, that's fine. Yeah, well, actually, in the cross-border game, I think everything boils down to how integrated are you in terms of transferring data, and how many scan events or milestones have you defined in your supply chain in order to give visibility. For an example, if you pick up a parcel today and the customer is waiting next day or the day after to see where is my parcel, right? So you got to give them the hub scan first, that's saying that the carrier has received. And then it takes on the line haul, which takes maybe 1 to 2 days, and the customs clearance. So you got to set your milestones properly in order to give constant visibility to a customer in terms of milestones. And those milestones need to be converted to scan events, and those scan events need to flow back to the carrier, right? So you have your origin handling agents, or your own setup, you have your airlines or shipping lines, and then you have your broker. So everyone needs to be integrated to the system. So if you try to do manually, it creates a lot of problems. Now, there are systems who can actually accept or absorb manual data uploads, bulk uploads. That means, but they are not accurate. It's not like you scan a parcel or a master carton, which has, mother and child parcels, and give those data back to the carrier. So it's, I think, in my opinion, getting a proper system, like one system that handles end to end. That system needs to have integrations with different parties along the supply chain, and the milestones to be defined properly, and those milestones to be converted to scan events gives you a perfect situation.
I couldn't agree more, because one of the things that we still face with, especially when you're dealing with a lot of logistics service providers, is that there's black boxes in different parts of the supply chain. And in those places, you can there's people that they don't have scanners, they don't have a form. So how do we give them that option? So mobile phone scanning is very useful. People have to also think of the way that the more they scan, the more checkpoints, the more accountability, the more control, the more accurate we do when it comes to actually going down the supply chain route. Because at the same time, I'm pretty sure a lot of times people get these like automated messages saying, hey, your parcel's here, but it's not. It's like this estimated time of arrival that they've sent out this email that's normally, but no one, it's not actually there. Arif, what have you seen in terms of, I mean, the scanning, the sorting obviously is a great option to helping keep track of all these things. It's a form of a check mark as well in the supply chain. What else, whatever forms of coordination should people look out for or apply?
Let me say this. I think in Indonesia the most important is data and document. So yeah, I have a case. We have a handle customer from Japan, and they don't use a system. they just do business manually. And okay, I told to them, please send the complete document to us, and I will handle all your shipment. I think it is yeah, we can handle it. Use our system, because we cannot expect somebody will use the system. Yeah, so yeah, something like that. So yeah, let us work with the custom, with custom. Yeah, so
Okay.
we can extract data. Yeah, you know, yeah. Let me handle all the job of the delivery needs.
Absolutely. I'm guessing when it comes to like different types of customers, we are all faced with different. Some are dinosaurs, some are non-dinosaurs. You know, they're all trying to get on the wagon of technology, and some don't have that
Yeah,
opportunity, that option to scale at the level that they're at. So that does become a problem. So um, how can we make, so instead of not, how do we educate people to join the digital world in terms of making things more scannable, sorting, you know, checkpoints, even from an airport, right? You know, half the time drivers are waiting, or there's no way of actually checking the airway bill, or there's no way of like, you know, because if things are not linked up to the airplane, you know, to know exactly where it is, like how do we track but also get people to be on board with this digital education that we need to communicate? Chaminda, do you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I mean, education. Yeah, I mean, education. It's hard to kind of find a start to this, because the industry drives your requirements, right? That the services that you need to perform. Now, for an example, if you go send cross-border parcels to Africa, which we do a lot, and the technology requirement is not that intense, because customers are okay to wait for like 7 days without having any visibility sometimes, right? So, and even some of the, I don't want to name some of the marketplaces who are using postal solutions. I have been a customer, and I don't see any update for almost 2 weeks, right? That's through the postal. So basically, I think education means, if they understand the advantages or the unique selling proposition that they can create by being different to another company who's not bothered to have that technology, I think that gives them the edge, right?
Absolutely.
So I think it's just pushing the behavior uh, to create that unique selling proposition is important. So, for an example, in the US, there are certain last mile carriers or zone skippers who are not scanning a parcel for 3 days. They just keep it in their hub because they're too busy, or they don't have the capacity. But there's someone else who's scanning the parcels like within hours or a day. They
Mm,
have deployed more technology because they understand the customer requirement, and they understand that there is a unique selling proposition where they might earn maybe few cents more per parcel by giving that service. So educating, yeah, education is good. I mean, obviously, just like forums like this, helps people to understand what's out there, what are the new technologies happening, or in practice. But at the same time, I think the market is forcing you to change
absolutely.
more times than.
Especially with now where, you know, we've been sitting at home. Okay, a lot of us now have been able to go out, but now a lot of us have been sitting at home, and one of the things that we do is we buy, right? And people don't want deliveries in a couple of days, they want it now, you know. And this is also starting to be the expectation for bulk shipments as well, because they have to sell also. It's like a, you know, it's obviously a domino effect. So this, I agree with you. Education, if we educate based on customer satisfaction, that is going to be one of the key reasons to help them understand, like, hey, you need to actually start tracking, visually showing people almost real internal scanning? Because that's another question that, we always ask our logistic service providers. Do you also have internal scanning, or do you also have a type of scanning that you share with your customers? And what's the difference between both of them? Because sometimes one is more detailed than the other. But the other question to ask ourselves is whether customers are happy with that information, and what is the right amount of information to give to a customer. So Arif, what do you think? Because I'm guessing parcel tracking and keeping cross-border, it's difficult. So how have you guys been doing it?
I think it's hard to say, Miss. As you know, yeah, the delay always come from custom, Miss. And the custom is the representative or government so they are a regulator. So we can touch them, and we just follow the rules, and we just can't wait when the custom clearance, when the community can go out, so something like that. So we just can wait and monitor, Miss. We can touch and drive them. As simple like that, Miss.
Right.
No, just no. We just make sure that our people, and I mean, in my side is where that. But how about in the custom? We don't know, because we cannot dive there.
I mean, I'm guessing this also has an effect of taxes, like how when things are changing all the time, and it must affect things. I mean, I guess in Indonesia, I know that it changes a lot. So, I mean, you need to have a system that's very flexible.
I will understand. Yeah, I tell you the truth, Miss. Like this Indonesia, something like that. We touch them, and yeah, the government is very, very slow to respond our needs, something like that. Maybe I cannot explain more because it is very, very sensitive. Okay.
Of course. No, of course, we won't go into that. But like we can go into payment modes. Like, for example, when we're doing cross-selling, how are the payment modes actually currently? Payment modes, currencies. What are your thoughts on handling?
As you know, the first maybe we have to make a deal with the exchange rate, Miss, because we use the Indonesian rupiah, and the other maybe using a dollar. So we have to make a deal in the exchange rates. So after that, we can do the business. I think it's the most important.
Is this something that you automate in your system that is or is it changed manually?
Yes. Yeah, we can change. Maybe you can monitor the exchange rate in real time in the custom website, Miss. There are many information there, so you can access and you can get information in real time.
Yeah, I mean, Chaminda, do you want to jump in? What are your thoughts on the obstacles that companies are faced with when it comes to payment modes and currencies?
Yeah, I think some of the companies have. I mean, especially during the COVID season, a lot of countries have faced, dollar shortages. So they automatically go into the mode of restricting outward payments of dollars because they want to keep the trading balance, and the dollar deposits. So certain countries have said, okay, fine, you can export only, $20,000, transfer $20,000 a week or something like that. So you face with that kind of challenges. And as a solution, obviously, you can work with a payment gateway who has a treasury function. Whether if you're dealing with multiple countries, you can have a treasury function where you can net off certain payments. I think there are quite a few companies who are doing it. Apart from that, I think if you look at COD, cash on delivery, that's I think is the biggest issue, because you collect certain amount of cash, you have to put the amount of collection on your manifest so that the last mile carrier knows how much to collect. But during that time, the exchange rate has changed. So who's taking the punch on that, right? I'm
I love
sure
your laughing.
Arif has more experience to talk about it, especially in Indonesia. But then how do you repatriate that money back to the sellers? You
Mm.
know, there are certain marketplaces who are not registered as a supply chain company. They are registered as software companies. They are not allowed by the fiscal policy of the country to transact money. So that means if they do the parcels, they got to have the last mile company getting in direct contact with the seller to transfer the money. That becomes really challenging.
Yes,
You know?
yes, especially when they have to actually
Yeah,
move the money physically to
correct. How do
to
you
fit.
manage 1,000 sellers to pay each one of them on time, right? So when it comes to payments, is there are quite a few challenges, and some companies have really figured it out through certain payment gateways.
Yeah, and let's not even go to the point of when if customs actually says no, this isn't approved, and you have to go back. Then that's like a whole, and you have to take the money back with you. So, but yes, okay, wonderful, guys. Let's actually wrap up and start answering some Q&As, and we'll go to our first. It's an anonymous person, but it's directed to you, Chaminda. Great insights on transitioning from descriptive to predictive analytics. What would you recommend traditional companies wanting to get started with analytics? So I'm guessing maybe.
Yeah, I think that's a nice question because obviously someone is interested to know about it. Obviously, you have lots of data when you're a seller or when you're a marketplace, right? So you can have those data, cleaned up and give it to a dashboard. I mean, there are softwares like Tableau and many other data analytics that you can do with it. And just start, even through Excel, you can still do some analytics. So I use Tableau quite a lot, and it gives you great flexibility in terms of analyzing data. You can integrate your data automatically to be fed into Tableau. So I'm not promoting Tableau by any way, but I think Tableau is one of the good software, and there are plenty of other softwares behind those. I mean, there are plenty of companies who are doing analytics.
Yes.
They use lots of softwares, Python and all the other softwares that they can use. So I think you got to start with a simple, software that can give you basic analytics first, and then you can deep dive if once you get used to it.
Yeah, I agree. And it also depends on what kind of analytics you're looking for. Because, for example, if we're going towards the predictive analytics based on what you were discussing, actually route sequencing and making sure that can be done through a basic Excel, for example, to kick off and even start analyzing whether that specific route is the best route. Like in terms of has it arrived there successfully, yes or no, true or false, and then going down like has there been a delay based on the service level, and what is the delay, so you can actually keep on assessing that route. But of course, this is if you have someone who can actually do this for you. If not, I agree with Jamin that there are a lot of services out there that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. They can
Yeah,
give you basic analytics, but depending on what kind of analytics you're looking at. So
yeah, sure.
a great question. I have another question from Bam Bang. I had experiences from previous company about why it takes 51 days to get items from Malaysia to Indonesia. I mean, I've got to admit, it is sometimes it is very funny when the distance is not far, but yet it takes a really long time. The question is why?
Okay, we cannot okay, if we do a transaction or apa is something like delivery in the by cross border means, I think it doesn't matter about the apa istilahnya, the tentang jaraknya ya. So I think so it means, I think think the problem is in the custom, in custom. It is very text. As I told you, miss. As I told you, miss. If the shipper give us the complete data and complete document, and we can handle and we can push the custom to make it faster. But if there is a trouble, if yeah, like a marketplace, miss, like a marketplace. Okay, there are many goods in the one packet, yeah, something like that. So can you imagine how many packet in the one bucket there? So they have to check it one by one. Can you imagine? It is very takes time. So yeah, it is very takes time. So it is it is not about the distance, miss. It is about the process in the custom, miss.
Yeah. So you,
Yes.
so you would recommend a good order management system to start
Yes,
off with,
yeah.
and then that would transfer to data to the customs, so that at least they know what they're looking at.
And I told you, miss, the custom is the government. So you can,
Yeah, well,
so it's very hard to, wow.
but I do agree with you there. I've heard situations where, the moment that it gets to customs, it becomes almost a selection process too. So it depends on also if you're out there going, hey, give me my packages, give
Yes.
me my packages. Like I've seen situations like this. So it's not even only about data. It really also depends on how the market is set up. And you're laughing because I know it's true. we
I same with my country.
No, but it's not just Indonesia. I'm from Bolivia, and
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
have
I know.
situations where it gets blocked up, and they just and it's really about you going and harassing them to give you your package. Yeah. So, but thank you for that. Okay, so the next question is, do we see some kind of standardizations in the custom process and procedures and technology would be an enabler? So I guess it's standardizations in how process is done. Anyone? I think, if I may, for that one, I think we're still far away from it. I think it has to come, again, goes back to data. I think it has to come from the first mile, the middle mile, and the last mile. And then we improve from that angle to create structure so that the data starts flowing in and out correctly. Then I believe, the customs agents and the government might get on board. So there's some countries that do really good jobs. There's other countries that are still a little bit behind. So does anyone want to jump in and say?
Well, I think standardization is happening. Certain regions, or I mean, for an example, European Union has taken the first step to standardize the data when it comes to descriptions and HS codes. So, HS codes, you need to give a certain number of digits in order to get the customs clearance. And once a seller starts getting the HS code for European parcels, he will automatically give it to the US as well. Even US, you should give the HS code. So once you start giving 60% of your parcels are covered with HS codes, then automatically you might give for the other destinations too. I think it's just a matter of time eventually that every company, or at least the developed markets, will ask for the HS codes. So that's a standardization. Description will also be standardized. Once you start giving the HS codes, you can't have a pen with a different HS code, right? So it's coming very fast, because most of the countries are actually understanding that they are losing quite a bit of revenue because of misdeclarations. How do you counter that misdeclaration? Is by getting standardization of descriptions, HS codes, valuations. So.
And do you think logistic players can be a voice for that, or does it have to come from the government?
Well, it's hard for us to kind of be an advocate, saying, okay, if you take a pen, how much should it cost? But in-country customs have enormous amount of data that they can actually say, okay, if it is a pen under this HS code, it should have a certain value. So there are benchmark values in most developed countries inside the customs. That's how they will say, okay, you declared an iPad for $100. It's not $100. It's X amount. So I think it's just coming. You can't avoid that. It's just a matter of time.
Well, fingers crossed it happens soon. I think we all are, especially with this day in market, we are all waiting for packages, and having that visibility and control, and being able to make sure that, we actually increase our margins internally and not externally, not only, because we have to end up giving packages away pretty much. Well, not packages, but free deliveries.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that is it, everybody. Thank you so much for attending. If Jaminda and if you can say how people can contact you, or on, if either LinkedIn or email, as you like, and if they have any further questions, how to communicate with you.
Well, if you take a screenshot of my name and Google my name, you'll find me.
I love it. That's great.
Yeah,
And if
I'm on LinkedIn most of the time. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'm on not so much on Twitter, but you can find me on LinkedIn or Google. Just type my name, and Google it. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Arif?
It's similar with Jaminda. Yeah, you can Google my name and you can add my title in JNE, and you can get all information about me. So you can, please don't hesitate to contact me. Yeah,
Okay. Everyone, screenshot the screen. we can pose for a second.
Let me just comb my hair. Not much that I have, but.
I'd like to express from Quincus, thank you so much for attending this. This has been great. It was very informative. I hope everybody here enjoyed and learned something. If you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, or to reach out to Chaminda or Arif. And also, please join us for our next Quincus talk. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Katrina. Thanks, Arif. Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.